Hi, it's Elizabeth Ailey. I am a Feng Shui consultant, and I'm really excited today to talk to you about Flying Star and the upcoming major shift in collective energy from a Feng Shui Eastern Chinese perspective. So there's a lot of information that I'm going to be going over in this video, and I'm going to try and make this as accessible as possible, something that you can use because this is so important for your space, especially for this year. First thing I want to talk about is the Feng Shui Bagua. So if you're not familiar with this, this is a traditional classical Feng Shui Bagua. It's over 4,000 years old. This is what we use to designate what different areas in your home correspond to different points in your life. So for example, southwest section of your home is love and relationships and marriage. So you may need to get out a compass. A lot of cell phones actually have that app already included in their phone. So you'll be able to take that out and really see, okay, my kitchen's in the northwest and my bedroom's in the southeast, and be able to use that information to help remedy it for the upcoming new year in 2022 from a Feng Shui perspective. So Flying Star, what is it? Really briefly, Flying Star is essentially an energy calculation. It's using celestial information just from a different perspective, a very ancient Chinese perspective of how the collective energies are impacting our space. So as above, so below, your own little universe, your own home, how you co-create with this space, and how it's being impacted by the global collective energy. What we'll be going over is the collective annual update energy. So every home actually has its own permanent numbers, right? It's kind of like an astrological birth chart, essentially. But when we go to the annual numbers, these are like transits, right? But the annual numbers are, this is the energy that will be there for the calendar year. And one of the ways I want to talk about this is first to actually go over really briefly what was the major shifts that we saw in 2021. And the reason I want to talk about it is that I think it really demonstrates how people's lives have changed in the last year. And it helps you sometimes go, oh my gosh, okay, I see how I was impacted by this, or I see how, I was able to remedy for it. Now, again, this is collective energy. Each home has its own experience, unique experience. So very similar to, getting a, astrological birth chart reading versus like collective reading of energy, right? Still super valuable, still super easy to make some of these corrections. So I really highly recommend that you do them. So what happened in 2021? Well, we had the two unfavorable stars. The first one was the 2 black star, which is a very yin-yin in energy. It's very heavy in yin. It's called the sickness star. And it was located in the north, which is career and life path. So a lot of people that didn't have perhaps a correction in their home, and sometimes corrections are already in a space, right? But perhaps had a very big change in their career. Perhaps you've changed careers. Perhaps you're unable to work. Perhaps you've had a life path change that completely altered the direction of your life. This is how this energy can show up in your space. So that was for last year, 2021. The other major energy was we had the 5 yellow star in the southeast, which is wealth and abundance. And the 5 is considered unfavorable, but in a sense it's kind of a real wild card, right? It's a really unknown energy. And so the ancient masters would go, we don't know what's going to happen with this. So let's just make sure that we don't, disrupt the energy. Let's just remedy for it, right? So you might have been impacted by your wealth and abundance in 2021, right? And it's interesting to see how, having these 2 stars in obviously career and life path, and then you also have the other unfavorable star in wealth and abundance, I mean, you can see how they're connected, right? So it's really interesting. And some people also might have actually experienced the 5 in a positive way. I know that there's lots of like billionaires, for example, that got even more money, more astronomical money in 2021. While a lot of more common people like you and me, it was a very different experience, right? So that's one of the ways that you can look at this collective energy. And I bring this up just to show the importance of why going into 2022, it's a really good idea to at least remedy for the top 3 things, most important things for your space. Of course, having a personal reading, that's going to give you much more information. I still think just using the tips that we're going to go over for 2022 are going to be super, super helpful and easy for you to accomplish in your space. Okay, so for 2022, what can we expect? Real general overview, there's something very interesting about the digital root of the year. So 2022 is a root 6 number. And so digital root is really just adding up all the different numbers in the year and then, making sure it delineates down into a single digit. So 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 2 is 6. So we get a 6. This is interesting because this is a reset year in Feng Shui. So when you look at the Lo Shu, which is an important calculation piece, it's much longer for me to go into explaining this information, but essentially this is how the energy naturally flows or enters into the space, and it starts at the center with the 5. Now, what's interesting, the Lo Shu is called the magic square. And one of the reasons it's called the magic square is that when you add up all of the boxes, regardless of it's, across, up and down, at an angle, it always adds up to 15. When you do the digital root of 15, 1 plus 5, you also get 6. So again, we are getting that reinforcement of the 6 energy for 2022. I find that really interesting. 6 actually corresponds to the lovers in tarot. It is connected to the heart. And also having the center of the Bagua is also connected to the heart. So there is a lot of heart and love that is actually coming into this energy for 2022. Now, there's additional things when we drill down into the flying star information that makes it really important to discuss. But I did think it was really interesting to see that we have 2 different systems, 2 different ways of showing us that this number is going to be very significant for this upcoming year. And one of the reasons this is so important is that this is a reset year in Flying Star. So this Feng Shui New Year that starts on February 1st, 2022, we will have the 5 star, the annual energy star, go back into the center square, which means all of the energy is being reset into the beginning of a new cycle, which is really interesting and a really important thing to know going forward. So let's start off talking about some of the good energy that we've got coming on, right? Let's talk about the good stuff. Okay, so we are currently in a 8 cycle period, which is a much larger, it's called like the construction or building period, and it runs for 20 years. So it's interesting. We've been in the 8 cycle period since 2004, and we will be in this period until 2024, which means we're coming to a close, right? But anytime that you're in this cycle, it means that the number 8 in numerology is going to be extremely powerful and very beneficial. And it is, the infinity symbol. It's connected to money, Whenever you see like 8 together, that's actually looks very similar to double happiness. So that is extremely beneficial. I wanted to mention that. So the 8 is going into the northeast section of the home. That is actually also where the Grand Duke Jupiter is going to be. So in the Chinese way of thinking, this is like the king. The Jupiter really does connect to fortune and luck. And it's interesting because that also plays into other astrological teachings that we have about Jupiter. When you have Jupiter in the northeast section of your home, consider it like having your, like it's like the king is basically visiting your home, right? The king or queen is like here in your space in the northeast. So what you want to do is just be really respectful of that. Make sure the space is very clean, clear. You know, they say don't do any major remodels in the northeast section of your home or even outside, right? Of course, if something comes up and you have to do it, you have to do it. But if it's elective, you know, like knocking down a wall or something like that, it's recommended not to do that. Don't do it. Don't play loud rock music, that type of thing. Be respectful of the Grand Duke Jupiter in the northeast. It's also said that you're not supposed to face that direction when you're sitting down. So, you know, in the Bagua, in the trigram system with Feng Shui, this classical Feng Shui, there are certain directions and degrees that you would want to sit for your own best, you know, health and communication and things like that. And they even say that, you know, if you're facing direction towards the Grand Duke Jupiter for the year, that you would actually change it because they took it that it was that important to them. It's considered a confrontation position when you are facing the northeast or facing the Grand Duke Jupiter. Just something to know. The other thing in this area, which is kind of interesting, in the northeast, we have one of the minor shahs. They're actually called the 3 Shah system, and they actually move together in a pack. So that is actually a little bit of troublesome energy, but it's not super impactful. So usually it only comes into play if there's some kind of Shah or negative energy happening already in the space. So just make sure that the space is nice and clean and clear, especially outside the home too. That's important. You just basically don't want to piss off a Grand Duke, basically. So that is what my recommendation is. Of course, some people do actually activate the Grand Duke Jupiter. I'm not going to recommend that, especially in a collective reading like this, right? I'm just looking at the annual information for you. If we were looking at your, you know, personal reading, your personal Feng Shui reading, your flying star reading of your space, and you had all good energy there, then yeah, go ahead. You know, we would definitely be like, all right, let's boost this, let's do it. But since we don't know what the permanent energy is in your space, I wouldn't amplify it personally. I would just make sure to keep it clean and clear. If you notice any kind of issues in this area of your life, then you would want to go ahead and make sure that you perhaps added something like a black tourmaline or a black shungite, which are really good for kind of absorbing any negative energy. You could also do a Chinese salt cure, which is a really, really wonderful way of absorbing any negative energy in the space. So this northeast, northwest section are having all of the 3 Shahs. And my recommendation is to, you know, just make sure the area is clean and clear, like I just said. You could put the crystals I mentioned, you know, shungite, black tourmaline, those would be really good there. Some actual real and good organite would be great there. But, you know, these are areas that actually have the really positive numbers. You know, 8 and 1 and 6 are all favorable numbers, which is great. Again, I don't know what your personal numbers are in the space, but just make sure the space is nice and clear. Make sure there's nothing happening outside the home in these areas. You can, of course, and this is great, You can, of course, put protective imagery or something like a cross or a hamsa or a picture of Archangel Michael or really anything, foo dog, whatever connects to you personally as protective. I mean, you could put Batman figurine, like whatever you think you can put there to, protect the energy. Go ahead and put it there. I usually just recommend this for people that have like a door. Like if your front door or back door was in either of these areas, so the energy is moving in and out all the time, I would definitely make sure to put something protective there like that. But that's really all you need to do with that. The three Shahs, the literal translation, not to freak you out, is called the three killings. It's called the three curses. But it's not the most troublesome energy in the flying star system. And again, I'm bringing up stuff that, collectively we can go ahead and just fix it, no problem. So don't be too concerned about it. But if those do show up with any of your doors or they're messy rooms or something like that, you'd want to make sure to keep them clear, at least for this year. Okay, let's talk about one of the bigger unknown or unfavorable energies and what we can do to fix it. This is going to be one of the most important things that you do in the space after making sure that you keep, of course, the Grand Duke Jupiter happy. This is the 5 in the center. So the 5 is a yellow earth star. It's, again, as I mentioned earlier, it's wild energy. It's unknown energy. And, traditionally, like the ancient masters would just say, well, you do not use that room. Like you close the door and you don't use it, which isn't really helpful in modern times. We use a lot of our space, particularly if you have a smaller, like a studio or one bedroom apartment. It's like, no, I have to use this space. So what do we do to fix it? Well, you're going to add heavy metal to this location. And when I say heavy metal, I am talking about the actual weights, like if you were bench pressing, or like a kettlebell, for example, that's great. Anything with metal, a treadmill, a very large printer if you have it, a refrigerator. Obviously you're not going to move a refrigerator into your living room to remedy this. That's when you would bring in, like a kettlebell or other weights. But I mention this because a lot of people will be really relieved when they look at their space and they're like, oh, yes, I've got a refrigerator here. Like it's done. It's already fixed. So for a space that is basically, 0 square feet to 1,000 square feet, you're going to have to add 45 pounds of heavy metal to this space. The good news is that a lot of things like even televisions are really, really heavy these days because they have a lot of metal in them. Dishwashers, laundry machines, things like that are definitely going to be a remedy for this 5 energy. And why heavy metal? Like, how does that work, right? Well, it's interesting because, Feng Shui and traditional Chinese medicine have the exact same roots. So one of the methods of remedying energy or different meridians in the body in traditional Chinese medicine is acupuncture, right? So using that metal to really clear out, activate, neutralize energy as it flows throughout the body in these meridians. And if you've ever had acupuncture, it absolutely works and is super, super helpful. Similar thing with what we're doing with flying star remedies, with this Feng Shui traditional remedy. We are adding heavy metal to really neutralize that energy and weigh it down. So that is why using metal is so, so important. And I find it really interesting that, a lot of like the Faraday cages or, like metal screens that you would put over like perhaps like a smart meter in your home, to neutralize any of the RF or EMF energy, is using metal, right? Like silver blankets, things that have, that people use those for their children, or when you're using like a laptop or something on your lap, you make sure to put that metal there, and it actually blocks that radiation. It works really similar to like when you go to the dentist and you have to do the x-ray and they come out with the big, leaded vest and they're like, don't worry about this. This isn't hard for you or bad. And they go around the corner and like protect their body, as they should because it's radiation. But what that, that leaded vest is doing is blocking out that negative energy, right? So that's very, very similar. And we're talking about, this is very old, thousands of year old information. And now we're able to kind of go, oh, interesting. This is how this works. So this is why we are using heavy metal to remedy the energy for the really sticky stuff in your home. Very similar to what is done in acupuncture, very important to do. And I want to make sure to mention that if you have like a 2-story home, for example, or even a 3-story home, good for you. You're going to want to make sure to put the heavy metal on all the floors. So that means you're going to have heavy metal on the main floor, on the upstairs, all of that in the center section. A side note is that traditionally we don't in classical feng shui, we don't remedy the center. It just isn't done. I don't agree with that. I have I've had clients where it was like everything else was going really well and it was like, okay, we don't remedy the center. And even with, some numbers there I would want to remedy, I absolutely think that anecdotally, my personal experience as a feng shui consultant is to add the heavy metal in the center of the home. The center of the home is health and unity. Gosh, we need that a lot in the world right now. So I'm ready to go. I've got the heavy metal in the center of my home. And it also connects to the stomach and the heart, right? So health and unity, particularly as it pertains to heart and stomach. So those are also things just to, keep an eye out for. I'm not trying to like fear monger or whatever, but this is what the information says, and this is how we're going to fix it. Okay, this next one is also extremely important for you to remedy in your space. And this is going to be the 2 black sickness star. And it is going into the southwest section of our homes. And that is love and relationships and marriage. Sorry, guys. I know when I was talking about the annual information, like the digital root of the year, and then also the low shoe information being 6, and that's connected to love. So I think that's still great. That's, of course, there is this extreme capacity this year for love. And when we have the 2 in the southwest in love and relationship, what does it tell me? It tells me that this could be tricky for a lot of people this year for their relationships. Doesn't always have to be a marriage relationship. It actually can be any kind of important relationships in your home or life, but particularly denotes potential issues in marriage or love relationships. So what are we going to do to fix it, right? So you can just get it off your mind and not think about it. We're going to add heavy metal again. So if you kind of skipped over a little bit, you might want to go back where I talk about, how much heavy metal to use and then also why heavy metal. But essentially for a 0 to 1,000 square foot home, you're going to want to add at least 45 pounds, and it's going to be needed in this location on every level, every floor of your home, and it's going to go ahead and just neutralize that energy. Let's talk about the 3 wood star, the 3 green, quote-unquote, coral star. It's going into the east section of your home, which is community, family, elders. And actually, because we are in a 8 cycle period, right, which is that 20-year cycle that we're in, it's actually not considered a very difficult star. It's actually a useful star. It's usable, as they would say. So I actually don't know if this needs to be remedied. Sometimes if there is like Sha energy coming, from outside the space or inside the space, it could activate it. And the energy of the 3 is not as impactful, not as a big deal as like the 5 or 2 or the Grand Duke, but it can bring out quarrels and arguments and lawsuits even. So if you start to notice like quarrels and arguments amongst like your family, your close friends, your elders, or even lawsuits, God, heaven forbid. But if you're seeing that or you have some concerns in that area, I would definitely recommend remedying it. Now, there is, of course, some debate about the best way to remedy this, but since it's a green energy, you could cut it with metal. So just adding a little bit of metal, like 30 pounds of metal, something like that would be fine. Or you could, quote unquote, burn it with fire, which could be like, it could actually be having some candles there that you light. But typically it's just like a little bit of red in that area, right? You don't have to go crazy, just like a red throw pillow or a red image, like a painting that has some red in it, something like that goes a long way, right? I see sometimes when people are using red as a remedy, they do everything in red, and it's the difference between, it's like a forest fire, it's like, oh my God, you did not need to do this much red. A little goes a long way. You could really just have a little campfire. That's all you need, right? Again, I don't know if it's necessarily needed to remedy, but if you want to, you can do that. You could, of course, also add black tourmaline crystal, black shungite, things like that for protection in this area. Most people won't notice it. Again, usable energy in this current period, just something to be aware of and to know. If this starts showing up, you might have something, in your personal energy of your flying star, or there could be some Sha energy kind of being activated. So you just want to go ahead and remedy that. Okay, the last one I'm going to go over. Woohoo, we made it. If you watched this whole thing, yeah, thank you. I put a lot of time into this, so I hope you are getting a lot of value out of it. So we're going to go into the West section where we have the metal, 7? Yes, we got the red metal 7, which is kind of known as the, again, not trying to scare you, robbery star. And again, kind of like the 3, not super impactful, not as much as a big deal as some of the other energy that is happening in the space, but I did want to mention it. So what is this energy going to potentially be impacting? Well, it could be creativity. It could be impacting your children. It could be impacting your projects, right? So this energy is a really interesting one because it's difficult to remedy it, honestly, without knowing what your personal, your personal flying star information is. That's just the truth. I could say, here's how you would do it, to make sure to put it out. But if you have some personal flying star energy in this space, it could act like putting a quote unquote remedy here could then like activate some personal energy that I don't think is a good idea. So really what I would say for this location is, without knowing your personal information, I would say, doing a black crystal, like a black tourmaline, black shungite, even like perhaps like a protective image could be really good there. Those are things like a picture of Jesus Christ, for example, or of the Buddha, or of anybody that you look up to as, or a warrior, like quite literally like a knight, or a dragon or a bear. Oh my, tiger. Actually, tiger could be really interesting because we are going into the Chinese Lunar New Year. We are going to be in the water tiger, right? And actually, interestingly enough, if you were trying to get pregnant, you would put you would put a tiger in the, in the West where it's the children location, right? You put children's items, things like that. But a tiger is what activates it. So if you don't want to get pregnant, don't put a tiger there. I'm going to say that. But remedying it, it's tricky. So I would just say, like either get a personal reading or, add a black crystal, black tourmaline, something like that, or some kind of protective animal or image that could really just, make sure the energy is being protected. So in conclusion, thank you so much. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it was really helpful. I know that this can help you. So go out and get your heavy metal. Particularly if you're new to Flying Star, go out there, go protect it, go get that energy. Sometimes a personal reading is actually really needed. And, personally this year, interestingly enough, my own personal space, I am going into what is known as a money lock, an annual money lock for this year. But I know how to fix it, so I'm going to fix it. And that is something that you get, that's a benefit that you get from having a personal Flying Star reading. I do them remotely since I am using the Lopon, which is essentially just a compass reading of your space. I do the declination for magnetic north. All I have to have is your address, the date that you moved in, or the date that the building was created. And then, I kind of take it from there. I might ask you some follow-up questions like, what direction is your front door? Usually I'm able to kind of get this information from like Google Earth and kind of figure out where the yang direction is of your space. But it's really basic information that I need. Also, your birth date is very helpful. It's optional, but I do think it's actually very helpful, especially since I use astrology as well, Western astrology. So taking that information, finding out what we can do to fix the space for you is so helpful, so beneficial for so many people. And what's great about being able to do remote Feng Shui sessions is I compile all the information before we get together. I can do just a recording video and send that to you with a written report, or we can get together for a live Zoom meeting, at your convenience. We can sit down and we can talk about it. We can go over each section. We can talk about, how would we fix this energy for you personally? And, then afterwards you have some help asking questions of like, did I fix this? Is this in the right section? Like, what do I do here? I have a missing section. What do I do here? So I have a toilet in this location. What does that mean? How do I remedy the cat box? All of those things are the benefit of having a personal Feng Shui reading with me. So if you're interested, if you find value in that, then please go ahead. There's information below about how to book services. And yeah, thanks. It was nice to meet you. Again, I'm Elizabeth Ailey, and I am a Feng Shui consultant, and I am just, living my dream, getting to help people, doing what I love. So really grateful you're here. If I could be helpful for you, I'm here for you. Have a good day, and I hope you have a great 2022.